how they cast these moments. And she talks about that repeatedly. She raises the things that his former staffers have said about him, his former national security officials, the concerns that they have were he to win office now a second time. And so we got into this question of, I think we all remember in 2020, former President Trump saying, frankly, we did win the election before votes were counted on election night in a race that he lost, of course. So I asked her about that. If that happens again, is she ready? Does she have a plan? Here's a response. Last election, the former president came out on election night and declared victory before all the votes were counted. What is your plan if he does that again in 2 weeks?
Well, let me say this. We've got 2 weeks to go. And I'm very much grounded in the present in terms of the task at hand. And we will deal with election night and the days after as they come. And we have the resources and the expertise and the focus on that as well.
So you have teams ready to go? Is that what you're saying? Are you thinking about that as a possibility?
Of course. This is a person, Donald Trump, who tried to undo a free and fair election, who still denies the will of the people.
She also, Jose, of course, did not rule out the potential for a pardon for former President Trump, but expressed, as you heard, that it's extremely hypothetical right now and that her focus is on the next 13 days. Jose.
And one of the questions that you asked her about was immigration. Did you get clarity from her on this issue?
Hey, Jose, yes. Well, you know, immigration is really one of the most important issues in this campaign. President Donald Trump actually saying yesterday that it might be more important than the economy. And it has been a real challenge for the Biden presidency. So I actually asked her, right now she's defending the bipartisan bill that includes more resources to secure the border, even shutting down the border and closing loopholes around asylum. But those are policies that President Trump defended when he was a president. So I asked her, on immigration, has Donald Trump won the argument? And this is what she said.
Right now, we're talking about border security, and there's nobody, no Democrat, talking about pathway to citizenship, an immigration relief, and the benefits that migrants bring to this country.
Oh, but there's no question that migrants bring. America is a country that was built in part by immigrants.
But people are concerned about their TPS, their DACA, we're talking about mass deportations.
I'm not talking about.
What do you stand on mass deportations? What's your stand there?
We need smart, humane immigration policy in America that includes a pathway to citizenship, putting more resources at the border in terms of security.
So, bottom line, Jose, she believes that we can have a secure border and also an immigration relief, but she mainly talks about securing the border during this campaign, correct?
And Hallie, meanwhile, you press the vice president on abortion rights. What does she have to tell you on that?
As you know, Jose, for Democrats, they see this as mobilizing, as a big way that they could potentially turn out voters in some of these key battleground states. It's partly why she's heading to Texas later on in the week. Texas is not a traditional presidential battleground by any means, but it does have one of the most restrictive abortion laws in the country. So she is heading there to demonstrate in many ways, to highlight the, as she sees it, life or death urgency to try to codify federally and protect abortion rights and restore federally the provisions of Roe versus Wade, which, of course, former President Trump installed 3 justices that ended up overturning Roe a couple of years ago. That helped Democrats in the midterms. All of which is to say, big issue, obviously, for her, for Democrats. The question is, to get something done to federally protect Roe, right, to federally codify abortion rights, you have to probably have a Democratic Congress, right? At least the way the political landscape is now. If Republicans were to win control of Congress, win control of the Senate, then that would be a potential sticking point for the provisions that the vice president wants to put in place. So I asked her about that, just pragmatically. Are there any concessions that she would be willing to give? Is there any way that she would reach across the aisle to some of these more moderate Republicans like Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski? Here's what she said. So is a question of pragmatism, then, what concessions would be on the table? Religious exemptions, for example, is that something that you would consider?
I don't think we should be making concessions when we're talking about a fundamental freedom to make decisions about your own body.
And we went back and forth on this, Jose. She is very clear, Jose, that she is not willing to negotiate here on this issue. She has described the harrowing stories of women who did not receive abortion access and the reproductive rights care that they needed. And that is a focus that she will continue to have for the next 13 days.
And Julio, I know the vice president was tasked early on with finding the root causes of migration. Hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans have had to come to the United States in the last couple of years. And I know you asked the vice president specifically about her positions on Venezuela.
Yes, and it's important. It speaks to the first soundbite that you played at the beginning, Jose. President Trump defining her as a socialist, correct? So what's her position to Venezuela? As we know, President Nicolás Maduro lost an election in the summer. The question is, what is going to happen if he doesn't leave office in January when his term ends? What is the U.S. going to do if Kamala Harris wins the presidency? And this is what she said.
We're not going to use the U.S. military there, but let me be very clear also. We must stand firm as the United States of America and respect the will of the people in that election, and I've been very clear about that as it relates to the election that occurred in Venezuela. The will of the people must be respected, and this is why we've also issued sanctions.
Yeah.
So not sending the military, which is an important thing to know from her, but also talking about sanctions that so far haven't really worked with Venezuela. And the question remains, what will really make Nicolás Maduro leave office? Is there a possibility from the United States to put more pressure on the Venezuelan president after his term ends, Jose?
Hallie Jackson and Julio Vaquero, I can't thank you enough for being with me this morning, so appreciate your time. Thank you. And you can watch Julio's complete interview with Vice President Harris tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, on Telemundo. Happening today, Vice President Harris and Donald Trump will be back on the road. Tonight, the Vice President will participate in a town hall in Pennsylvania, while Trump will be holding events in Georgia. This comes as the Trump campaign is dealing with fallout from two articles, bombshell articles, published last night. The New York Times had an interview with Trump's former chief of staff, former Marine General John Kelly. Kelly said that Trump would want to rule like a dictator.
Certainly, the former president is in the far right area. He's certainly an authoritarian. Admires people who are dictators. He has said that. So he certainly falls into the general definition of fascist, for sure.
Kelly also confirmed other reports that Trump repeatedly spoke highly of Adolf Hitler. According to a recent report from The Atlantic, not confirmed by NBC News, Trump made other comments about Hitler during a private conversation in the White House, according to two people who heard him at the time, saying, quote, "I need that kind of generals that Hitler had, people who were totally loyal to him, that follow orders." With us now, NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen and NBC News Washington correspondent Yamiche Alcindor in Philadelphia. John, good morning. What's the reaction been in Trump world to these bombshell articles?
Yeah, I think we can put it up on the screen probably. Stephen Chung, the Trump campaign spokesman, said that John Kelly, quote unquote, beclowned himself in his job. Obviously, the rift between Donald Trump and John Kelly pretty big. Kelly has been telling this story and others for quite a while now. You can also see in that Chung statement an accusation that Kelly is suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. This story about Hitler and the generals, obviously the time at which you were adoring Hitler is, and the way that his generals acted is not as important as the substance of what's being said. But I should say that our friends Peter Baker and Susan Glasser had that in their book, The Divider, a couple of years ago. So it's not a new allegation, although still a troubling one.
And Yamiche, meanwhile, the Harris campaign has picked up on these articles. What are they doing? What are they saying?
Well, the Harris campaign really is seizing on this new information and on these new revelations, even though, as you said, John Allen is saying that these are sort of things that we knew in some capacity about former President Donald Trump. But this is still new to hear John Kelly, who, of course, was the former chief of staff, say this. So Governor Tim Walz spoke about this just in the last few hours here. Take a listen to what he said.
Donald Trump's dissension into madness, and John Kelly's, who I thank for showing the courage to come forward, truly telling the world, those closest to Donald Trump know how dangerous he is. The desire of Donald Trump to wish he had generals like Adolf Hitler had, Mark Milley's as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, talking about he's the most dangerous person that he's ever encountered. And it goes on and on and on with people around him.
And Governor Walz also spoke about this in Wisconsin. He said, as a 24-year veteran of the military, these comments make him sick. So it really is showing you that this campaign, this Harris campaign, that they really want to make sure that they are reacting to this, that they're keeping this front of mind, and that they're really putting this in front of voters. And it really, in some ways, underscores the message that they've been saying, which is that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. It's a message that we've heard over and over again, including here in battleground Pennsylvania, where just on Monday, former Vice President Harris was sitting next to former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, saying his exact words and saying that he would really be a threat to American democracy. We expect to hear some of that again tonight in Pennsylvania when she holds that town hall, where she takes questions directly from voters as well. Jose?
And so, Yamiche, what do the next 13 days look like for the vice president?
Well, in this final sprint, one campaign official told me that the Harris campaign is trying to be everywhere they can be, because they believe in this last sprint that they really want to be reacting and interacting with voters directly, and going to those, of course, key battleground states that we've been talking about. So tonight she's going to be here, Vice President Harris, in battleground Pennsylvania for that town hall. Tomorrow she's going to be doing her very first campaign event, standing alongside former President Barack Obama in Georgia, of course, another key battleground state. And then she's going to be heading to Houston, Texas on Friday. That's interesting because it's not a battleground state, and they don't think that Texas is in play for her. But there is, of course, a Senate race there where they're trying to knock Ted Cruz out of the Senate. But they're also going to be, the Harris campaign, really talking about reproductive rights and saying that the consequences that have really put women's lives in danger in Texas, that those could be consequences that we see across the nation. So that's going to be the backdrop of that event. And then on Saturday, we're going to see her and former First Lady Michelle Obama doing a campaign event there. They're going to be doing that in Michigan, which of course is yet another battleground state. So you're seeing more ramping up. This is really going to be turning into a get out the vote effort here, with the Harris campaign really trying to make sure people not only are inspired to vote, turn out in big numbers, but also have a plan to vote. So you're going to hear a lot about sort of making sure that they have their rides or are taking their neighbors. They're going to be encouraging people to sort of make sure that their whole community has a plan to vote here. So a lot to put up, and I'm sure we're going to get even more events as the week goes on. Jose?
And John, meanwhile, what's the former president's schedule going to be looking like these next 13 days?
I mean, just like Vice President Harris, he's crisscrossing the country, he's certainly going to some different places. I don't think we're going to see him where Yamiche is, under the bridge in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, one of those collar counties in Philadelphia. But we are going to see him today in Zebulon, Georgia, in Duluth, Georgia. He's going to go to Tempe, Arizona. He's going to be in Michigan, in Traverse City, I believe, and then this weekend in a different part of Pennsylvania than Yamiche is in. He's going to be in Happy Valley, State College, Pennsylvania, big rural Pennsylvania, where he's hoping to get those big margins that have helped him in the past, certainly in 2016, win Pennsylvania. And then, you know, I mean, I feel like I sound like the Steve Miller Band here, singing all these town names. But in true Steve Miller fashion, he's going to end up at Madison Square Garden.